And I will bring up our speaker, who many of you might know. I don't know what percentage of you do, but he's from the architecture group over at Intel, and he was there for a number of years, actually in a number of different roles. But his name is Tim Abels, and he is going to be speaking to us about how he spends his retirement and how he uses charities to enhance his business and the idea of business as a mission to enhance his charities. So, Tim, why don't you give a quick introduction to yourself? I know it's
Sure.
rather lengthy. I could do it for
Okay.
you if you want me to. But
Okay. So I retired from Intel in 2021, and I had a long career with Data Center Group as well as with Intel Capital. And so I evaluated over 600 companies for Intel Capital, Dell Ventures, and others. Did the write-ups at Andreessen, Sequoia, et cetera. I have over 100 patents, but I also IPO'd two companies, and I sold a third company to Sprint. So I've had entrepreneur experience even before I worked at Microsoft, Dell, and Intel. So that's the quick version. I retired to focus on Lions Den, which is it's like a Shark Tank event. In fact, we have them in Portland, Tampa, and all over Africa. And then Africa Community Aid, where we've started 15,000 companies as a charity because it's zero interest loans. And these range from half of them are single moms and youth, and some of them are now the largest companies in Africa. So, largest tree planter, largest Spotify, largest Intuit, just on and on like that. So, anyway, that's what I've done. Please ask questions throughout. This is kind of a different theme where I want to talk about how there's really complementary to do ethical things, but yet grow your business. So, any other background, Daniel, or?
maybe just a quick disclosure that you are on the board of advisors for the fund that I run. So just to
Yes.
mention that as well.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah, and I'm on lots of boards. So, um, disclaimer at the bottom is I am not an SEC wealth advisor. So this is really preparation for you to go do that. So anything you hear today, follow it up with somebody truly certified. We assume the audience is certified, accredited, things like that in our events, but I have no assumptions in this event. So the agenda here is what is a win-win that you can grow your business as you partner in charity. And so this is effectively today's agenda. We'll talk a lot about deductions and making it sustainable for multiple generations. Why do this? Why smarter charity? And how do you actually do smarter charity? So, right away, think of it as you've got high income years and low income years. And when that happens, we highly recommend doing things such as one thing is just giving smarter. So at Intel and others, you can do Benevity and get a match. It used to be 10,000. It still is at Nike and many others. But if you've got spouses, et cetera, that can do that. Also, you can avoid taxes by giving to a charitable trust. So Fidelity is almost the biggest. I mean, it's almost as big as, say, the Gates Foundation. And the beauty of Fidelity, it's already an Intel partner. And when you move your money over there, you're avoiding taxes. It can continue to grow with very aggressive index funds. And then also you can choose when to give it. You can research who to give it to. And they're very appreciative to add your favorite charities. So there's already thousands of charities. You can easily add your own, which will help others to give to that also. And it's very easy just to move it from there with all that growth to your favorite charity. So I highly recommend that to also avoid taxes. And then there's the common things like how do you avoid end of year, make that 13th house payment, make that, as long as you're under the 10K SALT cap, things like that. So, we even prepay our Q1 taxes. So in low income years, roll over your Roth, and you can leave that to your heirs growing tax free. We've got kids that do this alternate year thing. This might surprise you, but if incomes are low, they can actually max out the short form benefits on even years and long form on odd years. So there's all sorts of techniques here for high income years, low income years, but these are the kind of things I want to point out right away. Okay. Also, retirements. I'm in Austin, Texas right now. Usually I'm in Portland, but notice that Texas is no income tax, corporate tax, estate tax, capital gains tax. I keep buying gas for about $2.70 a gallon. It's pretty nice while I'm here, and same budget as 1986. So it's really disruptive to be here. And so if you've got like a CERP at Intel, grade 10 and above, there's all sorts of advantages like that. So we have a big check coming, a big bonus. You may want to consider a change in geo that avoiding the 10% state tax, as well as avoiding the 5% city tax. Again, talk to your advisor, but that's pretty impacting. Also, it's one of the bigger loopholes is you can flip a residence every 3 years and all that improvement in value you get. So again, consult your federal state guidelines, but it's usually typically every 3 years. And when you do retire, I'm not suggesting this in the near future, but when you do, notice that you first pull from liquid, then you pull from low income, low tax impacting, such as capital gains, and then finally, and where you can stay in a lower bracket. And then finally, you get into the higher brackets or even income. The last thing you pull from is Roth. So pull in that order. So again, talk to your advisor. But these are some things that we want to trigger for you to talk about. And of course, Roth, you can pass on to your heirs. Estate planning. I want to remind you that one of the MetLife benefits is they will write up your complete estate plans. You're talking like 7 different contracts, many hours, and they will do that for free as a benefit. So you're paying just a few dollars a month, and you have that. Please, highly recommend that. And of course, you can have a more senior person and get even more quality with a second person, but something to consider. If you have more than 5 million, consider the Dakota Trust. That is a huge government loophole. But then you've got multi-generation wealth, and you can even have your trust for charities managed by your children. And you can also maximize gift tax amount without impacting, but you need to be careful in all these things to avoid. Dave Ramsey, that I've partnered with for a long time, he used to let us have his book for $8 when everybody else paid $24. That was a previous nonprofit we had. But he says only 1/3 have a will, only 1/3 of companies have a sustainability plan. So the very next owner could change all of your dreams. So, and we know terrible examples out there. I mean, Disney wants to be number 1 in gambling. Disney wants to be number 1 in acquiring competitors and shutting them down. And number 1 in, there's just a lot of challenges that they're having with pornography now with Disney. So, this is not what Walt Disney planned, but understand, any company, you need to put your ethics, your growth, your charity, all that, put that into your bylaws, into your sustainability plan. Otherwise, you're a heartbeat away from the opposite of your legacy. So we've covered a lot, but I wanted to start with just the tools. Now we're going into the why. Why charity? There are 2 billion people living on less than $2 a day, and they're in families living on less than $2 a day. Most of them live in North America through India. If you go to a refugee camp, the average stay there is 17 years. So when I go to one like Arua in Uganda, there are no trees within miles. They've already used those up. And so much abuse, so much pain. People under 30, their home, their college costs 3 times as much, and their degree is not a guarantee of a job. And their unemployment is much higher. So this is unlike previous generations. Even ESG investment. Where's your heart? Where's your legacy? This is a great time of need out there. And if you have excess, I encourage you to find out, where's your heart? Where do you want to give? Dave Ramsey said this well. He says, money will consume you until you give a percentage away. I love that quote. So, we have so much pressure financially until we realize, wait, I will not be mastered and controlled by money. So we said, why charity? Now I'm going to say, why smart charity? One person on our advisory board, he's done 100 conferences in South America and another 100 in Africa. And he says Africa does not have a safety net, not in community, not in family. It is so different than any other continent. And these are just statistics on Africa. And that's why for the last 9 years, all my vacations have been in Africa, even including 7 years at Intel, where I would take 3 weeks a year in Africa. And then I retired so I could spend 6 months and 3 months this last 2 years. But notice that their population, according to the UN, is supposed to be more than the world's population currently within 25 years. And women, the impact of them, you can arrange a marriage for a daughter who's 11, 12 years old. And I've seen this in all over East Africa. And, we in a town near Congo border, we surveyed 50 wives. All of them had been beaten that week. So I worked with another nonprofit and we fixed that in 12 villages. So, you can get involved, you can find the best partners, but this is a lot of the why and looking at where is the biggest pain out there. The World Bank had 17 trillion they gave to COVID. They gave 0 to Africa and wanted 10% interest. So almost no African nation got COVID relief from the World Bank. And then finally, United Nations only has 3 billion in aid. Only 3 billion. And a lot of that is, grafted. So an example I personally know in Uganda is the UN gives $2,000 per child, but the leaders of the government only give $50 per child to the school. The rest is overhead. So anyway, the right solution is not the UN. The right solution is this audience. That smart charity comes from the world economy that is 3,000 times bigger than UN aid. And it's under your control. Not political, not this grafting, things you can actually volunteer and learn from. So how can you ensure it's a good charity? There are charities in the US that have hundreds of employees making more than the US president. But you can go to Charity Navigator and see who they are. And so you really want to go to those sites. And even Benevity does a pretty good background check on companies before the match. Also start a community like this. Start those chat rooms and find out from your peers who has similar ESG interests. And we highly recommend you volunteer and work at these places. Give them time and knowledge and do your own research before donating. So ethics is very different than exploiting the weak. When I see so many nonprofits all over Africa, and I've been running nonprofits since 2001. So, you look at the exploiting column where places are only in the path of money, only moving money from the poor to the rich, only a middleman, only charging high interest, and hoarding the value. This is like only building toll booths. So how do you help folks and free folks to actually build value? Not capture value, but actually create new value. Build the highway, not the toll booth. This removes the middleman and invests with knowledge, time, and is very generous. And this is where an investment club can really be inspirational. Here's a real example I saw last month. I went to the 3 largest children's homes in East Africa, but I also went to a small one on the right that exploited the children. They only have 30 kids, but 200 staff. How do you do that? They're collecting money from 3 different continents for the same kids. The kids only get school, no job training, and when they get 18, they have to leave. When they're less than 3, they can't be adopted because they get more donations if nobody under 3 is adopted. So that's an orphanage in Kampala, Uganda, that I know very well, that I went all over, saw the kids, saw the campus, saw the staff. But on the left is the opposite. This is smart charity. And so here, the largest one in Uganda, transparent about everything, their kitchen for the orphanage is government certified to start 100 companies for the kids. The kids start and own their company. They also have an incubator to start another 100 companies. They have tools as good as the West for web development, for automotive diagnostics. The kids get mentors and coaches for life. The kids will be middle class in the same city, same country as the other column. This is, I mean, I'm talking to engineers. I'm talking to folks that can do deep analysis, spend a little bit of time, and you'll find examples like this. So smart charity, how do you find where they can have 100 times the wealth? You're teaching them how to fish, not just today's fish only, that it really is sustainable. Even in, I'm not Jewish, but even in Jewish, they said, you'll have no poor among you if everyone has a moneymaker and is working. Back then, that was land and something called gleaning. But what a concept. How do you get everybody that can have some income and has a way to work? So you're not just feeding them today only. There's still a lot of colonial laws. So Europe, for example, tariffs and taxes any non-raw materials from Africa. So for example, coffee factory has a high tax. So Germany makes more on coffee than 1.4 billion Africans. These laws are still out there. So how do you help, say, Africans make 100 times much on coffee? And then recently, October 16th, Mark Andreessen wrote a great paper that is technical and optimistic. How do you get it? We're on the verge of 100 times the productivity across big data, AI, across computing explosion that's coming, and across the level of energy that's coming from fusion and fission. When you have 100 times the energy and compute and data and AI analytics on that, wow, he's an optimist. It's inspirational to read that. I highly encourage, go Google it, find it, or just use this link here. But what a time to lift all boats, yourself as well as smart charity. So when we say charity, we really mean smart charity. 100 times, sustainable for generations, and we are in an explosion of opportunity right now. How do you maximize an impact? Here's one example. For $40, folks can have seed, and they will grow 10,000 pounds of corn in an acre. And they bring back triple dried for 3 neighbors in the spring, 9 neighbors in the fall, 27, 81. So within 2 years, 121 families have 10,000 pounds of corn twice a year. It gets better because those same families are now the co-op owners of a milling factory. So now they're getting milled food, quality, nutritious training. They get all the profits. They sell all their corn. No more petrol and gas. They just go across town and grind it right there in town. And this is happening. It gets better. That $2,500 milling factory, they pay back the loan to their village, to their leaders who keep sending it out for more microloans. This is how we started 15,000 startups, mostly single moms and young people with no land and no future. So you can do better than this. But notice the smartness here. How do you maximize the impact? Find your favorite charity, your engineers, help them be 100 times more effective. This is one example. And then ultimately grow your business. If you find mentors that are similar, that want to combine this, have excess to help others. So you're basically taking all this network of candidates and you're creating community with them. And some of those people that are mentoring and helping you, they'll be your partners and sales contracts. So that's the pipeline. You're being generous with others. What a great network. It's exhausting to hoard money. But once you're working with others and have excess and working, for example, Chamber of Commerce, accredited 1 million minimum, certified 5 million SEC minimum. But you work with partners like this. In one of our databases, we have 1,000 partners in that category. You really want to grow your partners and solve that pipeline there. And then you're sharing knowledge, you're giving, you're receiving. I mean, this is more like community and family. It takes a village. And where do you find these foundations and charity galas? That said, set your financial budget before you go. When I go to these things, it's very exciting. Who's going to buy the cake? Who's going to sponsor this? And I have a budget in advance because in the emotion you can burn through a lot of money. And you initially can give time and knowledge, and then you'll quickly be able to reinvest your funds. As you measure everything, as you see that your charity is actually profiting your business, give back. So you will see that healthy partners, healthy charities will give you a profit, but you can give back. Where do you get more information? Again, this is just a recap of the links I showed. I'm a big fan of Benevity, of Fidelity, and such. And then I'm also a fan of mint.com. I encourage folks to set their initial budget and things like that. If you can do better in a spreadsheet, good. Until then, that's a great start to log everything, to export to TurboTax and QuickBooks. And then a very useful book that ends every chapter with how to use Mint. How to set a goal, use Mint for that, and these are free websites. So again, just a useful starting point so that you can track your partnering. In backup, I want to share that if there's any questions, please email Daniel. I think he wants to do much more in this space. You can also email me at lions-den.org. Again, how can I help you? And ask me any questions. VC, it doesn't just have to be about charity. I've been doing this for a while, so please, I clearly worked at Intel Capital, Dell Ventures, Austin Ventures funded some of my IPOs. Anyway, that's so please email me questions.
All right. So
good.
Tim, thank you for the presentation here.
Good.
Since this club started off initially as a real estate focused club, and now we've gone on to alternative investments and the idea of passive income. And so there's a mix of people in this group that, most of them are Intel employees, although we're starting to get some other mixes in there. And some of them have their own real estate small businesses, right? They've got a couple of rental properties, they've got a short-term rental, they've got, some syndications, whatever it happens to be. And so people are at different points in their ability or in their thought process of giving to charities. And I wanted to kind of flesh out the connection here a little bit by asking, first of all, is this a process that is, when you're thinking about giving to charity, should you be thinking about giving to charity personally? Or should you be thinking about giving to charity through your business? And how do you determine which?
Well, yeah. So, good question. Understand that there's the focus, and then there's the amount. And so, for focus is really what has your heart. What is your biggest cause? What are you living for? And don't say you're living for more work and more hours. Nobody on their deathbed says, "I wished I worked more overtime." So really, what has your heart? And then on the amount side, you will regret when you throw money over the wall and have no idea. But if you start volunteering, if you start to know the group and you start getting personal information, and if you have a community tell you, you'll quickly learn who's real, who's not. That's why I gave the example there of 2 orphanages. And we work with a lot of orphanages. And the contrast is extreme. So, so it really, what is your focus? Because if you're into statistics, Barna.com has the most statistics, and one of his interesting finds is that people under 35 are throwing money over the wall. So Gen Z gives much more money than boomers, but they don't care where it lands. And so it's quite a change from previous generations. I just wanted to throw in some trivia if you're into statistics. But how do you get the best of both? How do you get focus on what do you really want to impact? And then after that, how do you really learn? And I can't stress enough smart giving. I spoke in 60 different villages in the last 3 months. I held up a soccer ball and I said, if you can give me one example where the United Nations or the USAID said, leave farming and make 100 times as much, I'll give you the football. Otherwise, it's going to your school at the end of the day. So 60 schools got footballs this year, just like last year, just like next year, because the UN, USAID has never said, we will help you get out of poverty. They basically said, stay farmers and we will rip you off. You do all the work and we will get 100 times the value with our factories. Yeah.
So,
And
okay.
so, yeah.
Yeah. So when you're an investor, right, and you've got a charity that you want to give to, whatever it happens to be, how do you go about thinking about, integrating your business and your charity? Should the dollars come from just straight charity in your business? Should it be part of a mixed marketing plan? And what I would encourage people to is, what are your comments about small groups together? Let's say you've got a group of 3 investors. They want to buy a property together, and they focus on whatever their favorite charity is. So they want to come up with a plan of buying this property together and bringing some of that money to a charity. First of all, how does that help their business?
Yes.
To do it that way. And
then
yeah.
So really, even going back to your first question, giving from your business will be much bigger impact because it's your brand that's improving. In fact, you probably need a page on your website, on your business website, that says, look what we're doing, and referencing that. And then people will realize, wow, I'm not just investing in your company, but I'm seeing that your company is really helping these causes. And so I highly recommend a page. And this is not a brag page. It's really just a professional page so that it spreads like a virus. Your real goal is saying, we care, we want others to care. And so that's going to be much more financially rewarding for your business. And it's better marketing, it's better PR, it's so much more partnering insights. And don't be surprised if a lot of partners step up and say, we want to partner with you because we see that you're not just another exploiting company. And clearly, they're going to know that you have more ethics and more generosity. So, from your business is much better than from the individual for all of the branding and impact and partnering. And, you will be able to partner with other companies very quickly. Don't be surprised when you say, I really like this company, this cause, that it becomes like a virus and you get to spread that. Yeah. And also measure this with a spreadsheet. Don't take my word. Measure with a spreadsheet and say, when you did these things, how much did you have easier partnering? How much more impact was there? Yeah. So impact and benefit to your business.
Can you define what you mean by business as mission?
Yeah. So when you have a cause, you're not just doing business. You're actually saying business is a way for me to open doors and help folks. And so I actually have a VC firm that complements our Shark Tank events. And so we really, now for me, every penny of profit goes back into Africa to a local village and helping them. So I'm not really for profit, even with my for profit. But when you find you're coaching a business, you're helping business, can you mentor and train others? You really want to, your life should have purpose. You will want to. I didn't show my last slides here. Let me jump down. Sorry, but I encourage people, don't just write a to-do list. Beside the to-do list, write down the why. What's going to get you excited about doing your job? So everybody knows, write a to-do list every evening, jump in and do number 1 the next morning. But if you write down a why, you'll get more things done. And that why should be how you're helping others.
All right.
How do I take,
Well, one more question and just kind of a follow-up, and then I'm going to start taking questions from the chat. See, we've got a couple of them in there. If you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat, or maybe we'll just open up the audio here. I wanted to ask, have you seen this book? It's called Conscious Capitalism. It's by John Mackey. He's the founder of Whole Foods. And his entire theme here is the idea of everything that you do should be a win-win, 6-way win. He mentions partners, suppliers. There were 6 entities or groups that he mentioned in here. And at the same time, the idea is that your business should have a mission, and it shouldn't be motivated by bottom line, but mission oriented. I don't know if you've read this, but if you have, is what you're saying similar to this?
Yeah. Oh yes. Yeah. I mean, it really is win-win. And you know, this is so not the concept of win-lose exploiting. You can briefly exploit, you can create toll booths, you can be in the path of money, you can add middlemen, but it's pretty obvious to all. And so there is a low business ceiling to the world of exploiting. When you actually are ethical and generous, there is no longer a low ceiling, and it really opens you up to the healthy partners that are more eager to partner. And so not only is John Mackey describing a win for those six others, but it's really a win for Whole Foods. And my son ran their data center. I mean, we know Whole Foods very well, and he really led by example. And that's what when Amazon was patient with him and acquired his company, a lot of that was because of his high quality of ethics. And we really want the same kind of branding. And life is more peaceful, less stressful. You're no longer managed by money because you're generous, but you're smart generous. You're actually measuring, and you're returning and measuring, giving more.
All right. So Ashish is asking, Tim, and of course you're not a tax advisor, we all know that, but he's asking,
Thank
are
you.
foreign charities eligible for U.S. tax deductions? Do they have to be a 501(c)(3)?
Yes. Yeah. So basically, you want to find charities that have a U.S. side. So you want a 501(c)(3) on this side. So, for example, I have one that has an East Africa registration as well as a U.S. registration. You'll find a lot of those are like that, and it's not that hard. So you find a category you really want to give to, and that's possible. I can't imagine any big foreign charity that doesn't have a U.S. side. But if so, talk to them, talk to me. I'll tell you how to file a U.S. nonprofit very quickly because I care about all these things. I'll tell you how to file an Africa nonprofit NGO very quickly. So, how can we help? I'm serious about this. And tell me your cause and how can we help? But yes, you will need to have a U.S. side, and it'll make it much, much easier for tax reasons. And we're talking federal, state, and local. There's so much benefit of a U.S. side. So you don't want to take that chance of I'm throwing it over the wall to another country. It's going to be a lot harder and probably won't be approved.
Glenn is asking, and if I missed anybody in here, I know there's been a lot of discussion about MetLife and Hyatt, which is great. I think
Yes.
that all got resolved.
Good.
But there was one question: can we get the access to the slide decks? So Tim, I'll ask you: may I have permission to distribute this to the group, or
Yes.
do you want it?
These
Okay.
are freely
I will-
reusable, not copyrighted. Enjoy.
I'll
Make
put
it
it up
better.
on my Google Drive, and I will drop a link into the Discord server.
Good.
And I think that'll be a good way actually to moving forward to distribute the slide decks. I know I've got quite a few of them that need to be distributed. Glenn is asking, as a retiree, if I'm wanting to do something like you're doing, Tim, do you have a recommendation on how? My screen just jumped. Where'd it go? How to take a percentage of my income and channel it to a charity, i.e., high tax bucket, etc. Or I'm sorry, IG, high tax bucket.
Yes. Yeah. So great question. I mean, so really you've got the charity side, you've got the sustaining side. So on the sustaining side, if you're going to start a realty club, you're going to start a 220 VC fund, realty club, email Daniel. If you want to start a VC fund and you want a standard 220 contract and you want limited partners, I'm happy to share all of that. I'll still include Daniel in the email, but because sustainability is the key. You don't just say, I'm going to leave and I'm just going to exhaust my funds. You basically want to say, I still want to earn this money while I'm giving. It's just a smarter way to give. And so I can help you both with how to file for nonprofit, who are good accountants, who are good lawyers, all those kind of things. It's always you're driving. I'm only making ideas. This is not legal recommendation. But there is the giving side, but there's also the sustainability side. So, for example, when you have a standard 220 fund, you're going to be making 2% a year managing it. You're going to be 20% of the upside. We've been doing this now, and for the last 9 years, we literally have the largest tree planting, the largest Spotify. We'll soon have Africa's largest Intuit, LegalZoom, fill in the blank. So we coach very big companies, and we're not just helping small companies, we're really helping them become the largest, hopefully, in the world.
By the way, Tim, this book you recommended to me, The Business of Venture Capital, came, and I'm just starting to get into it and enjoying it. It's the Wiley
Yes.
Finance series. If
Yeah, if you
anybody's
want to
interested in
start
that.
a 220 fund, that is the best book. Yeah, if you want, can you hold that up again?
Yeah,
Yeah. If you want to start a VC, this will save you buying 10 other books.
I could drop the link to it in the chat.
What's it
The
called?
hardcover was textbook price. So
Yeah, it's $100. It's $95 on Amazon. But yeah, the business
What's the
of
name of the
venture
book again?
capital.
the business of venture capital. In a moment, I'll drop a link to it as soon as we're done asking
Yeah.
questions here.
Yeah, don't start a 220 fund without reading that book. All 400 pages. Sorry, there's no shortcuts.
Follow up from Glenn. Tim, is your model to inject as many 2,500s as you can afford and assume that it starts the 100x flywheel and it's effectively written off, and then you inject the next, since whatever is generated is reinvested locally? So
Okay.
I guess he's asking about the flywheel.
Yes.
Are you injecting, noticing the results, and then looking at that 100x improvement and then doing another injection, or what is your capital injection strategy?
Sure. So again, it's kind of the two things I said. We're very, very giving, but meanwhile, take microloans. So we've got 100 different cities all over East Africa, and they will send us back a report that has a typical microloan report: who, what, when, where, and we are zero interest. But we also get 2 columns of need. This is a single mother of 7. She's got 3 disabled kids, but there's need. And we could get a column of 100 times. We think this company is strategic, will be 100 times bigger. Those are the companies we coach. We coached 300 of them, 314 of them the last couple of months. And when we isolate those companies, we got, for example, a legal Zoom company that already has 124 forms. You can do all of your 1040, the Africa version. You can do your estate planning. You can do all that online with forms. That company is going to be very big. And so our for-profit will buy 10% of that company. And so we have sustaining because we're actually a VC on the for-profit side. But then, and then we've got this pipeline, which currently has 250,000 startups. We have 250,000 startups in Africa in our pipeline, and the best ones pitch at our Shark Tank events. And then anyone can invest in them, accredited investors. And then we, of course, are saying, this is the one we highly recommend. And then my partners and I invest in those too. So, I could go on and on. The 5th largest tree planting in the world, the largest Spotify in Africa. These are interesting companies. And so we're actually self-funding by saying we're creating these huge companies. And I can also email this group, why invest in Africa? 2/3 of the world's resources, the most phones. You don't need banks. Their finances are with their phone number, not banks. So the speed and the entrepreneurship of youth is quite impressive. And we invest in U.S. companies too.
All right, here is a question that just pulls on my heartstrings, and I think a lot of people feel it around the world, particularly with everything that's going on in the world. How do you protect your mental and emotional health when you see all the troubles people in the world are facing? This is a question from VC.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to be blunt here. When I said those refugee camps, they put up a stick and a handkerchief when their 11, 12-year-old girl has her first period to say she's for sale. So when you're going down and you're seeing a stick with blood on it, that's basically saying, I will sell you my daughter if you have 6 goats or more. Yeah. I mean, and then at the Congo border, any daughter 11 or older, they're selling her to someone that doesn't have much more than a few goats, because where there's extreme poverty, it is that bad. And so thankfully, in the case of the Congo border, we have fixed 12 cities. We now put the parent in jail. We put the husband who beats his wife in jail. And none of those crimes are happening in 12 cities. And with the help of the government, we're expanding that across Uganda initially. So yes, it breaks your heart. Yes, it's painful. But imagine if we just stopped closed our eyes, ran away. But it really does break your heart. I mean, just, extreme abuse. Basically, don't trust politicians, pastors, police, parents, professors. There's unchecked power in some countries, really unchecked. And wake up. This is a perfect audience. Which of those has your heart? Go help them.
So Ain Andamit had a good comment here. I've seen the opposite. Opposite from the question, not from what you said. Just go build a house for the poor family across the border. Spend a week there, and your mental health improves considerably. And
Yes.
I loved that answer too.
Yes. So my son has a nonprofit that builds houses for single moms of 8 to 12 kids, and they make money as they're building it. They learn skills, and somebody got a house. So yeah, there's find an NGO, find a nonprofit.
Okay, Eugenio has a number of questions here, and I think once we're done answering these, we'll just open up the audio. So he says, the presenter mentioned using one business to help and also teaching charity to fish. Does the presenter recommend a phased approach to engaging the charity? And he has a follow-up question.
Yes. I mean, smart investors, smart money, you really want to do this in a phased way. Volunteer first, get inside information, have community, do all this. I have been very disappointed with nonprofits. Some of them, like say Habitat for Humanity, I love them. In fact, we got our no interest, no collateral. They have 100% ownership. We basically stole that from them. So find something like that you can really know has a history, a long-term, things like that. There are some awful examples out there where the vast majority never left the leaders of the nonprofit. So do your homework, slowly ramp up. And the other thing too is make this tax friendly. Use Fidelity Charitable Trust, do something like that, and get yourself in the high tax years, the high bonus years. That's a great time to give. And then you can choose when to give, how much to give, and it's still growing. It's still growing with the best index funds. If you want to tie your index funds to S&P or NASDAQ, whatever your favorites are, you can do that easily with, you've got thousands of investment options.
And then innocent.
And I'm not an advocate of Fidelity, by the way. I'm just saying because I know most of you have that benefit.
And then Innocent Akari mentioned here, joined late, but do you run anything in Kenya as part of East Africa?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we are all over Kenya. So
I know you were there just a couple weeks ago.
So if it's an orphanage, we give them web and training and tools as good as the West, free, hosting free. We literally have SiteGround hosting for just a Kenya site. We've got hundreds of companies hosting there. If you're not good at math, we'll still get you goats, we'll still get you seed, we'll still do this, and we'll still get a report from you, and we'll do factories. So yeah, we really have a lot with Kenya. And we're currently working with 90,000 communities in Kenya. And it's really the poorest in the far west there in Kakamega. And factories got shut down. The sugar factories, the paper factories, the biggest factories got shut down. And people have to sell their land for the first time, and the children have no future after that. So it's when I say Kenya, West Kenya is the worst.
All right. And then
we've also been in the slums. So the two biggest slums and all the riots in the slums, we have 3 microloan centers on all 3 sides of the biggest slums in Nairobi. And Nairobi is lacking 2 million homes, and that's growing by 50,000 homes a day. And Nairobi and Dar es Salaam are growing so fast, in 2050, they'll have more people than Texas or New York. So there's Kenya.
Don is asking, and I think you've given the link a couple of times, but do you recommend Charity Navigator as a screening vehicle for charitable giving?
Yes. I wish that you could still contribute your vote to them, but you can't do that anymore, but you can still see their research. So it's really useful as one-way research. There'll be other charitable sites soon which you can actually participate, and you can actually vote the same way you can on Amazon Books or something. So I wish they'd kept that feature, but overall they're very good. And for a quick scan of finances and adherence to mission, is it really aligned with you? Is it transparent? Is the governance and financial processes good? Those are the 3 things that all limited partners should look for.
All right. And as a reminder, our community now has an area to chat in. We're on a Discord server. The link's in the chat. Feel free to go over there and start a discussion. I am brand new to this, so if somebody knows how to administer or has experience with administering Discord, please contact me. I would love to get a person to help me out with. I'm gonna read through the tutorials as quickly as possible. It'd be great to have some experience with this. So we're gonna open up the audio here. If anybody would like, we've got 6 minutes left. Feel free to take yourself off mute.
Hey, Tim, I had a question. So, by the way, thank you very much for coming in and sort of, setting putting things in perspective, right? I think that perspective is sometimes missing. The question I had was, are you primarily saying this is about charitable giving, or is it about running a VC fund, or is it some sort of or is it both?
It's really both. That you can keep giving if you've still got a for-profit, and you can give very smartly if you make sure that you're teaching them how to fish and they're growing 100x. And so I want to be smart with both. I want to have an engine that can still keep funding, but I also want to be able to give, knowing that I'm not just they're just going to have more babies and I'm going to have to give more food tomorrow. That's not going to work anywhere compared to saying you now have a factory, you now have 100x the productivity. That's so I'm saying smart with both.
And
Okay.
that's kind of your idea behind business as a mission, right? You
Yes,
have a
yes.
business, you have a charity that you want to support, and you're using business as an engine to support it.
Yes. Yeah. And when people ask us business questions and web questions, we say, oh, here's our website. We use WordPress because 50% of websites use that. We use WooCommerce because a third of e-commerce sites use that. And so we actually train 1,100 web startups how to use these tools because we use them. So if you still work and get your hands dirty, you can give that knowledge to others. We're not just giving money to others. We're really giving knowledge. And so keep your own, and what do you enjoy doing? If you enjoy doing engineering, keep doing engineering. And the world needs FreeCAD today. Take that flash drive and make 50 different, like a walking tractor. You can make those things today from a flash drive. The world needs that. It's the Linux of CAD systems. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Oh, and Tim, feel free to put your contact information up.
Oh.
Yeah,
I've got a question.
when suppliers, can you talk about working through some of the local suppliers when setting up some of the facilities and challenges with that?
Local suppliers?
What are your challenges with working with local suppliers?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of challenges with local suppliers. The whole supply chain has challenges. So, for example, when you're trying to help tea growers, importers from Africa taking Africa tea, they charge 200 times the price they pay for it. So how do you find generous? You can help all sorts of companies and factories, but you've got to help it all the way through the value chain. And suppliers, when we give away coffee factories, we have to go find a supplier that'll start them with like 1,000 bags cheaply. And so we thankfully we found one in China. But where do you find? And somebody mentioned chocolate earlier. So cocoatown.com is the best chocolate machinery. If you want to build a chocolate factory, you have to go to cocoatown.com. And so you have to find some suppliers. And the most important supplier is the factory and web. I mean, really, there's 3 economic models: farming, factory, web. The U.S. got wealthy right after Civil War. China got wealthy this generation. The rest of the world has not, especially the Southern Hemisphere. How do you move them from farming to factory and e-commerce? And so when you really think of value chain, supply chain, move them to factory, move them to e-commerce. That's the way I interpret value chain. Otherwise, you're just the UN saying, stay farmers forever, do all the work, and you'll make 1% of the money.
All right. I heard another question here. Could that person speak up, and then we'll close off the meeting?
Sure. So we've all heard of things like microloans, but I've seen another model, at least in Southeast Asia, where you basically do an investment. It's not a loan, so and it's usually short term, like 6 months, 9 months. So maybe some business, so a small store needs money to buy some equipment, and so there are websites out there that will kind of crowdsource the money, and
Yes.
you support a particular campaign, you put the money in, you have your preferred rate of return. If the business fails, you don't really get much, but otherwise
Yeah.
you'll get your preferred return. And as I said, it's usually short term, like 6 months, 9 months. Do those kinds of things exist in places in Africa, and what do you think of them?
Yeah, if you email me, I can list you the world's biggest ones, and we're partnering with them. And there's only one that's global and really big. I can't think of their name right now, but I'll give the name to Daniel later when I remember it. So yeah, that is, you're right. So zero interest, local trust is one model. This reasonable small interest and investing. So one way is to invest in the upside, kind of like a debt or convertible note. That's the left column here of ethical investing. Loans of high interest, regretfully, are pervasive in these places. There really are exploiting high interest loans that are, no upside, steal the land, things like that. And so I just compared the two side by side here to help answer your question. But I really like crowdfunding. I like your example. If it's low interest and or you're just really sharing the upside. So we do that today. Our for-profit is sharing the upside, and we'll typically get 5 or 10%, and then we'll coach them to be very, very big. This week we literally gave out copyrights, trademarks. We really want these companies to be big, and we're just giving them knowledge and giving them tools just to see that happen. So yes, that's a great idea. Make sure the interest rate's very reasonable, and it's really nice for something like a convertible. The only two contracts a VC should use is preferred equity, convertible note. Buy that book, read it. And so this idea of convertible note is you're just sharing the upside. Who doesn't like that? That's so different than a win-lose with the bank.
Hey, Tim, one quick last question. Do you have any opinions on kiva.org?
You're talking about the electric vehicle?
Apparently you don't. It's kiva.org.
Can you give me more insights?
Well, okay. I think it was somebody wanted to know if that was one of the places that you were referring to here recently, the name that escaped you. So apparently that wasn't it.
Kiva is a zero interest crowdfunding site, and it supports most of the small businesses in Africa, Middle East, all these
okay,
places.
That's great.
So,
they're a peer. They're good.
One can start for as little as $25. That's all I wanted to say.
See, and we're going to write the software and have crowdfunding soon. We've seen some terrible crowdfunding out there that's 10%. You're only buying a license. You have a weird concept of ownership. I could give you a dozen problems with some current crowdfunding. We want to make it really low interest. It sounds like more like what Kiva has, and you're actually owning either a convertible note or preferred equity with standard terms. You have to only write standard terms for later rounds of financing. So don't be weird. Don't be complex. Also follow the ILPA guidelines. If you go to the website, ilpa.org, all limited partners, they have a great model there of all contracts. That's a fair contract with standard terms. You have to be ethical with everybody.
All right, we're a tiny bit over our time. And so, Tim, thank you for coming in. I'd like everybody to take themselves off mute and thank Tim for coming in and sharing with us.
Thanks so much, Tim.
Yeah, thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
All right. And next week, we're going to be back with Andy Sinclair, value adding in the Midwest market. So we'll see you all then. Have a safe and wonderful Halloween.
Hey, Daniel, would you send out these slides, or can I get the slides?
Yeah. I will drop it into the Discord server.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Cheers.
Mhm.